Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Behind the Stand. I'm your host, Stephanie, and joining me today is my co-host,
Kara Cousins. Hello.
Hello. Today we're going to be discussing the case of Elisa Lam, and the book we're going to be talking about is Behind the Door by Amy Price. Oh, this was a book.
It sure was, Stephanie. I have so many thoughts and feelings about it.
I do too. So, Amy Price was on the Netflix documentary.
The crime scene, the vanishing at the Cecil Hotel.
She was the hotel manager for 10 years, but she was the hotel manager during the Elisa Lam case. And she was just off. But the way that she kept referring to the Cecil as like her kingdom and also like her zoo, both in the book and the documentary, was just weird to me.
It was very odd and very off-putting. I just feel like whenever she was talking about her experiences, it was it's mine, it's about me, instead of the whole overview of what was happening at the Cecil involving Elisa Lam and some of the other suicides and murders.
Yeah. She definitely always had that. And that was both in the documentary and in her book. It was, I was picked out of circumstance. I was never meant to be a manager. I was only supposed to stay here at the Cecil for 3 days to redesign a room. And then because I have such a great work ethic, I'm so great. I became the manager, all out of circumstance. Look at me.
And I think it's really not really funny, but it is in a way that she didn't give much credit to many of her employees who helped and made the Cecil and the stay at Maine Hotel come to fruition. I feel like she just was like, oh, I did this. So, Stephanie, what did you like about the documentary?
I really liked the detectives. I thought they were really good detectives. They seemed to really care. They both just wanted to, at the end of the day, bring her home. I know that they did ask, and I started thinking about this, but I really liked how they did ask the parents about, like, is there a chance she could have ran away? But as soon as they said, like no, they immediately were like, okay, we believe you. And then they immediately moved on. And I think that just shows that, at least with these two detectives, it's really about when they ask, is there a chance that this person could have ran away? It's about showing your work in the case. So I really liked how they just asked the family and then moved on.
I agree. They were very thorough, and I feel like they took each step extremely seriously, and that I feel like they didn't leave any stones unturned, so to speak. And I feel like they were very sympathetic and empathetic with the family and the victim.
I know. When the parents and the sister came out for one of the press conferences, I really just felt just awful for them.
One of the questions that was on my mind, and I know this was covered a lot in the documentary with Elisa Lam, but do you think there was foul play involved?
I personally don't think that there was foul play involved in her case. I think that we just have a case of somebody a very young girl who was in a brand new country, who was left to her own devices, who was suffering from a mental illness, who thought she was invincible, who should have been taking her medication. She was not taking her medication, and she was just exhibiting all of those symptoms of getting worse and worse and worse. And other people have come out who have lived at the Cecil and said it was very easy to get on the roof, even since the documentary, have been able to get on that roof undetected.
Yes, and I agree with that totally. I know there was a whole debate about, like you said, about how did she get in the water tank on the roof, but there was either the stairs or the fire escape, which I think Amy also mentioned she had several tenants that would sneak up there anyway. So like you said, it was very possible that Elisa Lamb would have just climbed up there and nobody would have noticed or thought different of it at that time.
Yeah. I think people who go onto the roof now who get caught are only getting caught because people are aware that you can get on the roof and how dangerous it is to be on that roof because of this documentary, because of Elisa Lamb.
I agree. And I think that many of the YouTubers and amateur detectives that came to the Cecil Hotel and were exploring, like, how she might have did that, I think, that drew attention to everybody that, hey, the roof is up there and there is the fire escape and anybody can get up on there. I mean, there's no secret there.
Yeah. They're standing on the roof going, how could she have gotten up here? You're on the roof with the camera.
Exactly. And that just boggled me. Like, I know, like, they were being very thorough in this discussion of Lisa Lamb, but my goodness, like, we've talked about the roof so many times. And as Amy said, there are many people that went up on the roof. I mean, that she had to call security or call the police. So, I mean, to me, it wasn't such a mystifying situation.
Yeah. People who have lived there since the 80s and 90s would go on the roof all the time. This isn't a new development that only, like, our generation has known. Like, yeah, kids. I used to do that all the time. You're just learning what I've already known.
Yeah, I mean, they had the evidence of the graffiti, the cigarette butts everywhere, like food. Like, it's nothing new. And I feel like that was a lot of the fixation in this documentary. And it's like, hey, it's such an easy thing to see and solve.
Yeah. And I feel like that was more on the crime sleuths, the amateur detectives. The LAPD were kind of like, oh, yeah, it's kind of easy to get up here.
Yes.
I mean, we're up here in our full gear. People are up here with cameras. We can get up here. No problem. It's probably really easy for her to get up here, too.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole, like, I do want to, like, talk about, like, the elevator video because I think that was a source of, I don't know, it was very mystifying to some people to use that word again, but then when you're watching that video and the explanation is, oh, she hit the hold button, like, I think that takes the whole supernatural aspect out of the whole elevator mystery.
Yeah. I actually rewatched that video separately from the documentary, too, and I can see her not... It looks like she's pressing buttons, but is she actually pressing the buttons, if that makes sense?
That does make sense because you can't really tell, like, in the video, she's just using her hands and, like, roaming down the series of buttons. So we don't know precisely if she's actually clicking each button.
And I never saw, like, anything light up. I never saw, and I know it's a really grainy video. I know it's not, like, the best video in the world. I never saw anything, like, light up. I never saw... And yeah, it's possible that the only button she pressed was the open door button. That's on all the elevators. That's the only one she could have opened. It's an old elevator, too. It could have just been stuck.
Yeah, there's so many things that could go wrong with the elevator, and there's many possibilities. But I also want to say, like, with the camera situation, do you think that she was involved talking with somebody in the hallway? Because they make it sound like there could have been another person on the outside holding that button. But do you think that's a possibility?
I think she was probably talking to herself.
That's what it sure looks like in the video with, like, her hand movements. And and as they described, she seemed off. Well, obviously she's experiencing mental illness.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessitate that there is somebody outside the hall, like, waiting for her or lurking after her.
I can only imagine, again, being in a unfamiliar country, in an unfamiliar city, in an unfamiliar hotel, and then going through a mental health crisis.
I can't even imagine how overwhelming that must have been for this girl that was, 21?
21.
And yeah, she had no idea. And then
Psychosis is a thing.
it is a thing. And I feel like a lot of the internet sleuths forget that she was experiencing her own crisis, and that it wasn't so much as the video was creepy or whatnot. It's just sad seeing her being in that kind of state. And I feel like a lot of the sleuths were kind of just like, oh, wow, this is so weird. This is so creepy. We want to explore this without the actual feeling of, well, what's going on with this poor woman?
Yeah. No, I just look at it and I'm just so sad. I just see somebody in a crisis, and I just get sad.
I do too. It was really hard to watch, but yeah, I did end up watching the documentary a couple times through just to that video was very haunting. And the other thing I guess that was touched on was, do you think that any of the staff were involved? I know that some people think that Amy Price was to blame for her disappearance, or she had some guilt somewhere. What are your thoughts on that, Stephanie?
Well, she does cover it in her book. I do think that she does have guilt, that she does talk about how there were 2 other instances with Alyssa Lamb. The first being that she was having problems with her roommates and the girls, like a dorm area that was for the travelers. She was like leaving Post-it notes saying like, go back home, stuff like that. She would lock the doors and require like a password to come into the room. And then she was in the lobby and she said something about LA is crazy and so am I.
Yeah, I feel like, that needs to be touched on, because I think that my issue with this was, yes, it was the Cecil Hotel and the Stay at Main share a lobby. So technically this was on Amy's, so to speak, jurisdiction at Stay at Main.
Yeah.
And from what I recall, Amy in the book, there's been several tenants that she did call the police on, and she did even like call upon social workers because she was worried about their health. So my question is, where was that at with Elisa Lamb?
Yeah. The excuse she made was it wasn't that bad. Well, there's a lot of characters at the hotel. She's just part of it.
I think that's definitely Amy's defense mechanism from what I've heard and read. And I think that's unfortunate, because if Elisa Lamb, maybe somebody could have reached out to her, I don't think we would have had what's going on, like what happened to her.
No. And not to come at Amy Price's defense, hindsight is always going to be 20/20. She has called the police and called social services for less, it seemed like. I think this is where you really needed someone in a manager position who was better equipped to handle the Cecil Hotel. So somebody who had a little bit more experiences on the social services side. And then Amy Price could handle the stay at Main of the travelers, everything. That way she could have gone to the manager of the Cecil and been like, hey, I have this guest. She's doing your atypical things. Can you come and help me out?
I think that's an excellent point, Stephanie. I do sympathize with Amy in some ways, because I feel like some circumstances were above her with the Cecil Hotel, the location, just some of the characters she called them that came in.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there was somewhat a lack of care about Elisa Lamb.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
I don't believe she had anything to do with Elisa Lamb's death, but I feel like she could have maybe, the staff, everybody could have did a bit more to maybe just see what was going on.
Do something. Try something, Amy.
Yeah, it
This is excuse after excuse after excuse.
It did, and she's very defensive. And like I totally get the whole the whole thing of like, for instance, when like the water taps were running that disgusting brown color,
Yeah.
and there were two out of country travelers that was staying. I think it was it at the Cecil? Stay at Maine. Well, when they were having water pressure issues, and then they went to, I know it took them a while, and it took a lot of complaints for them to even go and check the water. Yeah, and I feel like that, as you know, a hotel staff and hotel manager should be priority. I know she had a lot going on, and she did have a lot on her plate running this hotel.
Yeah.
But still, if guests are complaining and this is a serious matter, then it needed to be investigated immediately.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do anything about the heat. You could do something about the water.
Yes, exactly.
You can at least do something about the water pressure and it being brown.
Yes.
Immediately.
And she was kind of just like, oh, well, you know, the water is dirty. It kind of felt like she was like, well, it's a hotel. It has quirks, you know. It wasn't like, I need to be looking into this and we need to find why this is happening. And
you were doing more about the cockroaches and the rats. You were bringing an exterminator every month. You were policing people on open containers in their on the Cecil side for your tenants, checking in on them. I mean, you have a young tourist who is doing some atypical things, and you're just like, she's just a character.
Yeah, and I just feel like Amy's whole, like, if there was a problem, she was like, well, it happens. It's at the Cecil. Like, what do you want me to do about it?
Yeah. Then she bashes others about when they're just like, well, it's the Cecil. It's right by Skid Row. You're going to have dangerous people. You're going to have all of this. She bashes them.
And, like, when Elisa Lam was discovered in the water container on the roof, I just feel like Amy didn't want that to take over, like, the fame and infamy of the Cecil. Like, she seemed very like, oh yeah, they found her body. Like, like I'm tired of this discussion, kind of, and that it's ruining the image of the hotel.
The image was already ruined.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, people are going, and this isn't accurate information, but people were going around saying Richard Ramirez was staying and living at the Cecil Hotel, which again isn't right. He only stayed there for about 4 nights is what I officially saw. He kind of went over there to hang out with some friends every now and again. He didn't stay the night, but he went out and hung out with friends when they had a room. But he himself only checked in about 4 nights sporadically.
And, you know,
you had that rumor going around.
You did, and you had the name Richard Ramirez. Right. I mean, everybody's going to be like, oh, Richard Ramirez was here.
The Night Stalker.
Exactly. The infamy, you know? And I think, you know, either way you slice it, basically, the Cecil's going to be affected.
Yeah.
And
you had overdoses, you had suicides, you had murders. Yeah, you already had that. You were already known as, what was it that the person on the documentary, this is where people come to die.
Yes.
You already had that before Elisa Lam.
Reading the book, I thought maybe she would have more, come off as more, you know, compassionate and more like, well, okay, this is what happened. I'm trying to make my point out there. But it's a very contradictory read. I feel like sometimes I was like, oh, poor Amy, you know, and then half the time I'm like, well, why would you say that about your tenants? I mean, I know you have like problems with some of them, but to call them weird, to call them odd, I mean, they're all sufferers of unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah. Especially when towards the end of the book, she was like, oh, I didn't fully understand some of the guests who were staying at the Cecil until I myself was kind of in that situation where I had a husband who was on drugs. I myself was depressed because my business wasn't going that great. I was depressed. COVID hit. This documentary came out. People were not being very nice to me. I kind of understand some of the people at the Cecil now.
Yeah, that was very hard to read and hear because it's like you have spent, what, 10 years in charge of this place
Mm-hmm.
around these people. So you're telling me for that length of time, you just didn't care to get to know the circumstances or understand like the area
Yeah.
and the Cecil. It just comes off as being very insensitive.
Yeah. It comes across that way. Especially when she was going on about like the body double and how much she didn't like the heels and the nylons, and she was like, I would never, like, that's what you're concerned about with the Netflix documentary. For instance, she said that at one point they were asking her questions and she started to cry, and they took that out of the Netflix documentary. They didn't include that. I would be so upset. I'd be more mad about that than they portrayed me in nylons.
Nylons and ugly heels.
Ugly heels.
I mean,
Netflix kind of screwed me over in this way.
to me, that just screams entitlement and a sense of, oh, I don't care. Like, it's my kingdom, like you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like she cares about herself a whole lot. But when it comes to the other side of caring about other people, she's just kind of like, eh.
It seems like if they were nice to her, if they called her beautiful, or if they raised her self-esteem in any way, she would bend over backwards.
Yeah,
for them.
She did, because there was one that she liked. Wasn't there a tenant called Pebbles or something like that that always complimented her? And I think it's the right one that she would like.
The one who's in the wheelchair,
Yeah,
who would call her beautiful. Yeah.
The one gentleman. Yeah, there was a couple instances of that, and yeah, she did. She did really love that attention, and she did pay more attention to the people that did acknowledge her, and I think it gave her. She felt like she had more power, and that she was appreciated.
Yeah, and I think that speaks volumes to the type of person that she is. That she craves that attention, that she needs that attention. She needs that validation.
Yep. And which is too bad, because I feel like there was a lot of interesting points that she talked about in her book, and I would have loved to learn more about, the history and what and I know she enjoyed interior decorating and being a manager eventually, but sometimes it just came across as it was very negative, and I feel like she didn't have anything positive, even though she said she loved the Cecil.
Mm-hmm. If she would have reached out to the other people that she worked with, hey, you've worked at the Cecil forever. Could you tell me, like, your side of the story? What's it like being in maintenance? What's it like being in cleaning? What's it like being at the front desk? And then it being more of a group project.
Absolutely, because they are supposedly a unit, like working in a hotel. I mean, it takes many to run, and especially a place like Hotel Cecil, Yeah. So, yeah, it would have been great to hear, like you said, other voices from the staff, so they could compare notes and be like, well, this is what so-and-so thinks, and this is what I think. I don't know. I think it would have been, more cohesive and as a group.
Yeah, especially because she keeps referring to them as her family, and spending 10 years at a place like the Cecil is a lot, and I can't imagine how hard that must have been. But you have to also think about how hard it must be for everybody else. I mean, when at least the book was released, Pedro still worked there, and he was working there long before she got there.
It would have been great to hear more about Pedro's story and how he came into work with the Cecil. And I mean, he did talk about he did point things out to her on the tour that she talked about when she first started, about where people died, all kinds of horrendous stuff like that. But it would have been nice to hear Pedro's own experiences, both positive and the negative.
Yeah. And even though she was talking about a lot of the things that happened before she worked there, I found it a little interesting that she never talked about some of the more notorious murders or incidences that have happened there. one of the ones who was murdered, and her murder's actually never been solved. They called her Pigeon Goldie Osgood.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that part. I know that wasn't she the one that would feed the pigeons, and she was just such a delight to all the staff.
She was the retired telephone operator who was living there. But yeah, she would feed the pigeons. She was just a really well-liked older gal, but everybody had nothing but nice things to say about her. But yeah, they found her in her room, and they had a lead, but he was never convicted. He was just charged, but then the charges got dropped.
Okay. That's very unfortunate. Yeah, I would love to, like, in the book, that was prime opportunity to be like, here are some actual true crime cases that happened, because I don't feel like, I know this is kind of her, so to speak, memoir, but it's also true crime based. I don't feel like she addressed a lot of true crime within its contents.
I mean, like, the full title of the book is Behind the Door, The Dark Truth and Untold Stories of the Cecil Hotel. Like, and you're not going to mention one of the most, yes, it's kind of well known, but it's not like well known enough to like everybody knows this. And as I said, it's an unsolved murder. Nobody has solved this.
And I think Amy would have, you know, it would have been good for her to be like, hey, like, besides like the whole Richard Ramirez, like, even though he was only there for 4 days, but yeah, for her to bring up actual true crime cases that, you know, it has such a dark past.
Yeah.
I mean, and when you're reading the book, in my opinion, I thought that's what we were going to delve into, besides a little bit more about Amy. But instead, we get a lot about Amy's experiences there, which is interesting. But then it goes off into her personal life too, which I was like, I didn't sign up to read about Amy and what was it, Teddy?
Yeah.
I really tried to like Amy in this book, and there are genuine moments where I'm like, okay, she has good intentions for the hotel. She wants to make it, you know, a place where people can be like, yeah, the Cecil, and stay at Maine. But it just, she comes across very vapid and shallow, and I don't think her points come across very seriously at times.
When she tried to open, it's not a horrible idea for some place that's not downtown LA, but the art place she tried to open.
Artie. She had Artie and Marty, right?
Artie and Marty, the art and the coffee shop.
Yeah.
In downtown LA, 1 block away from Skid Row. No.
Yeah, Skid Row, it just doesn't, it doesn't equal out. I mean, like her idea, like her jewelry and everything, I feel like she has ideas, but downtown LA is not the proper place for her to do that. And it just doesn't work.
I wanted to know more about the Cecil than her jewelry business.
Yes, I just felt like it was a lot of fluff about Amy and not enough about like the true crime and Cecil and everything that the Cecil has to tell. Like, it's got so much history, but I feel like we barely dipped a toe in the pond, so to speak.
And I didn't mind her saying like, this is how my childhood was. This is how this is how I got to where I got. Like, I don't mind a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Because I think it explains a lot about somebody. I think it explains how she ended up at the Cecil and why she stayed there for 10 years. That caring, that nurturing. This is why I felt like I had control over the Cecil. It's because I had no control as a child. Here we are.
Yeah,
I liked that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Stephanie. I did enjoy that too, because it paints her as a person, like a human being, and I feel like we needed that about her, because if you watch the documentary, you're just going to see a woman that appears completely robotic and emotionless, while the beginning did have, like, she came from a small town in Michigan and she wasn't raised with the mindset of big cities. Like, her father didn't like them, and I feel like that.
And then one day her mom just picks them up and was like, I'm divorcing your dad, get in the car, let's go.
Yeah.
That had to be so traumatic for a kid. I can't imagine. I felt bad for her.
And I feel like she felt like a, so to speak, broken person that needed to find her place too. And I feel like the Cecil, offered all that. And it's like you said, she could have control and she could try to help and fix the building and possibly tenants if she could.
I would have really liked to know more of, a lot of bad things happened at the Cecil and there's a lot of tragedy. I would have liked to have known more of the good.
Yeah.
Instead of the, the little apex of like, hey, here's all the front desk notes of issues that we've had. I would have really liked to have had ended it with like, here are the success stories. Here's somebody got out of the Cecil, a long-term tenant, or they got a job here. They moved out. They got a house. They got married. They had kids. I would have really liked to have known more of the success stories.
I agree. And because Amy gives her success story, and I think it would have ended on a high note if, she would have included some positivity and some, things might not always be great, but like, here's what's happening with these tenants and maybe some improvements and things like that. I think it would have been more of an enjoyable read, in my opinion.
Yeah, she mentions it a little bit in the middle. She's like, I always find enjoyment when a tenant comes back and apologizes for the way they acted. They got help. I always found enjoyment in that, and I always, wished them luck on their way. And then that's how she ended it. One of the things I absolutely hated was anytime she said the words, I'll talk about that later.
That was a lot.
It was so many times I lost track.
And it was just like in the middle, you could be reading, and then she'd bring up this fact, and she'd be like, oh, well, we'll get back to that in a minute. It was so distracting for me, and I felt like it was so clumsy in the narrative that it was hard to like get back to where you were. Yeah. For me, it was anyway. I don't know how you feel, but I just was like, oh, this. And then she does it multiple times, and it was just like, oh, I can't.
I can't. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that later. Like, when will you? I don't trust you now.
I know. I was like, Amy, what are we doing here? Amy, we got to get back to the point.
Yeah.
So, that was one of my most frustrating points with the book is we'll get back to that later. I'll tell you about that later. So,
what things did you like about this book?
I liked learning about Amy. I always love learning about an author and just somebody. I want to see like where they start from, like how they are going in life, And it was interesting to see Amy's journey from like her childhood, so to speak, and then her going to the Cecil, which is a huge, huge move, like such a culture shock.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy listening to her on like some of her adventures at the Cecil. Like I liked learning about like the renovation process and like just her everyday tasks and life at the Cecil.
Yeah.
I just would have liked to hear more history and the more true crime aspect of the Cecil because there is so much to cover there.
There's so much, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would just like to learn more like updates about it and also about like the background during the Great Depression of it because there's so much in between history. Would you recommend this book to somebody that's learning about the Cecil Hotel or has an interest in it?
I don't know if I would recommend this book to start off with. If they've told me they've watched the documentary, possibly, I would bring up the fact that she has written a book. But I really liked this other book called Gone at Midnight, The Mysterious Death of Elisa Lam by Jake Anderson. I liked that one a little bit better. He goes more into kind of everything that's happened surrounding Elisa Lam's death, all of the conspiracy theories, and he debunks them, but he also brings up more of the just kind of breaking down what happened, why this case became so media heavy, and it's because of the Cecil and its history, but also because of, at the time period, 2013, people were more likely to believe ghosts, supernaturals, than somebody in a mental health crisis.
Yep, you're absolutely right. When this story came out in 2013, were you, Stephanie, aware of everything that happened at the Cecil, or was it like a learning experience when you delved into this case?
I was aware of some of the things. I wasn't aware of like everything. So yeah, like Pigeon Goldie is an example. I didn't know about her. I knew that some serial killers had been there, Richard Ramirez being one of them, and then the Australian serial killer Jake Underweger being the other one. So I knew about them, and then I knew that this was a hotel that possibly the Black Dahlia was last seen at. Looking into that one further, that's not the hotel that she was last seen at all. So I knew at least a little bit, and I knew that it was a place where there has been a lot of deaths. I also knew it for being haunted.
Yeah. I had known about like the Cecil Hotel. Like, I knew that it was a dark place. Many things have happened,
Mm-hmm.
and like I had heard Richard Ramirez had stayed there, and so I have several true crime books pertaining to Richard Ramirez.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't totally new to me, but the majority of the things that happened there, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know that it was used for tenants that can rent, and I thought it was a hotel. So that was kind of new to me. And then I didn't know so many people died there. I knew there had been like reports of ghosts and hauntings, but there are so many hotels that are known for that too. So I was just like, well, another haunting. And plus, when American Horror Story came out, the hotel, and it was based off the Cecil. And I know there was Richard Ramirez was depicted in that, and that kind of got me down a rabbit hole on that. So so it was very interesting to learn more about the Cecil, though.
Yeah.
Yep, how the media looks and affects everything. It's always a wonder to me, and also how people get such conflicting information.
So were you like around the internet? Were you around a lot of the media stuff when Elisa Lam was missing and then was found?
I was very prevalent on YouTube. So when that case emerged, it was just, flooded with theories and YouTube findings and the amateur sleuths. So, and then of course I looked up like different newspapers to see what was really happening, and it was just shocking to me, I guess, like hearing this young girl that went missing for 19 days and then was found in a water tank. It seemed surreal.
Yeah. Was there anything that you like believed in more than the others?
I certainly didn't feel like it was a supernatural disappearance. I don't feel like ghosts had anything to do with her ending up in the water tank. And I had listened to many of YouTubers talking about the supernatural and ghosts and hauntings there. But I mean, I'm not sure which side I fall onto the whole ghost believing in them. But I certainly didn't think that the supernatural forces had anything to do with this poor woman. And I didn't believe that she was murdered or followed or put into the water tank.
So I'd heard about the elevator game before all of this happened. So when she was going like the in and out, I was like, oh, maybe she's doing that. I'm like, maybe she's playing the elevator game. I don't know.
Well, it kind of looked like it.
It kind of looked like it, yeah.
It really did, so.
But I'm somebody who was kind of in the realm of maybe it was somebody who did this to her because of how much they were saying the door was not, like, opened of the water tank. And it's only until it was corrected, but it was drowned out by everything else, that I was like, oh, okay, maybe she did go in there herself. But yeah, I think at the beginning I was kind of like, maybe somebody did do this to her because she didn't seem in the right state of mind. Somebody definitely could have taken advantage of her. People do terrible things.
They do. And what you just brought up, actually, when I was watching the documentary, I was like, maybe somebody did harm her. Maybe they did scare her. I mean, that was after I had given it much thought and had watched it a couple more times, that kind of occurred to me. But then they said that they didn't find any foul play or evidence of that. I was like, okay, well, maybe it was an accident or definitely suicide. So,
Yeah. Friends, and I think her sister, when talking to the police, said, hey, what are some of the symptoms of mental health issues has she experienced in the past? Well, she does have a tendency to run and hide, and especially if somebody that she doesn't know tries to approach her. And there are a lot of people in the Cecil that do give off bad vibes. There are some people in the Cecil who I can see maybe they are also not mentally okay and could have maybe startled her, and then she takes off and runs.
I can see that too. Like, to me, that's the most like plausible that could have happened. Well, then they brought up like she was seen with two men, and I was like, well, maybe she got scared, and didn't know where else to go and kind of bolted, like you said, and climbed up there.
Yeah.
And she could have slipped and fell in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not saying they did. Maybe they said something to her that it freaked her out. Maybe they implied something and it freaked her out. Or maybe she just, snapped of the finger. She was just like, I do not like this anymore.
Yep, something uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, yeah.
Girl in a huge city that's new to it. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Two guys you don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm feeling safe. Oh, wait, I don't like this situation anymore.
And nowhere to turn to, really.
Yeah.
So
you see an open window because somebody left it open, went to smoke or something.
She probably maybe had no idea what those were. Because, on first glance, I didn't know what they were. I was like, oh, that's where the water is. But maybe she was like, oh, I could hide in there. And then when the lid closed, she couldn't get out. Yeah. So it's horrible either way. My heart really goes out to her, though, and her family.
But yeah, I definitely know now that it was an accident. It was just somebody going through a mental health crisis. But yeah, I think definitely back when this first happened, I was definitely leaning towards somebody did this to her.
And I can totally see your theory on that. And plus, like I said, when I rewatched it, I was kind of like, well, maybe somebody did. Like, I was thinking, well, maybe somebody put her body in the water so it couldn't be discovered. That was my other thought, because if the dog couldn't smell it in the water, somebody could get away pretty clean.
Oh, yeah. Any of the people staying there, they all knew how to get to that roof. Anybody working there, they knew how to get to that roof. People went onto that roof all of the time.
Well, and Amy had talked about this one gentleman that she really liked to talk to in the hotel, and then he would go up to the roof and do all sorts of activities. And then when she confronted him, he got very upset about it. I don't remember his name, but
I know who you're talking about. He's the one who said he worked at the studio and on shows her mom watched and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, and he was up there all the time. So the possibilities, were endless. If foul play was found, there would be so many people that could have been a suspect. But, it's just, there's so many circumstances with her case.
Yeah. I think that's what makes her case so media heavy. But I think that's why people now talk about her case, is because there's so many questions I think that are always going to be left unanswered. And I think the first being, how did she get into that water tank? And if the door was truly left, what was obviously her mindset isn't all the way there. But, how did she get into that water tank?
Yeah, that's what I want to know,
what made
too.
her run to that roof to get into that water tank?
Because it would have to be a climb to get into that tank, too.
I think it's a climb to get onto that roof. People have done it with cameras, but that seems like a climb. But I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't go out.
I don't like heights, but just...
Oh, I hate heights.
Just the thought of this poor girl going up there.
Yeah,
and then...
but I think that's some of the questions that we're always going to have. What made her go onto that roof and what made her go into that water tank? But I think at the end of the day, it was a mental health crisis. I think that it is just unfortunate that it happened at the Cecil.
And I feel like if she's going through this crisis, if she had stayed anywhere, I think something would have happened, like if nobody had intervened.
Mm-hmm. I think that's another question, too. If she would have stayed at anywhere else, would somebody have helped her? Would somebody have helped her?
Yeah, would staff have been more receptive than Amy and her staff were?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the question.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Would you recommend this book to anybody?
I have mixed feelings. I feel like if they have some knowledge of the Cecil Hotel ahead of time, or if they have seen like this document that we watched or another type of documentary, maybe, but I just don't feel like it gives us a clear explanation of the history and the ongoings and the works of the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah. It's a little unfortunate. We read this for my true crime book club, and a lot of people didn't like it.
Yeah, I
can see why.
Yeah, I can too. And I was like looking online, and it seems like it has a mixed reception. So again, I feel like if you have prior knowledge of the Cecil Hotel, and you know a good amount of true information, you might be okay reading this, but I definitely wouldn't put this as a standard for learning about the Cecil and everything that's happened there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's even really good, there are some good YouTube coverage of the Cecil Hotel, so I would, recommend probably a different book or a different media source besides Behind the Door.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I really wanted to like this book.
No, my hopes weren't super high, but I was hoping, to gain more of an understanding of Amy as a person and just to hear about, her experiences and some of the history and darker stuff of the Cecil Hotel. So I just feel like that opportunity was kind of missed in this book.
Yeah, I think it was too.
Since we've just covered the Cecil Hotel, Stephanie, what other kinds of establishments such as this would you recommend researching? Like H.H. Holmes, I know, is a very fascinating character.
H.H. Holmes is fascinating. The whole...
Because he's the one that constructed the hotel.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a killing,
he constructed...
Like it had murder dungeons and stuff like that.
Yep. That was him. Yes. So I would, if you like learning about the Cecil, all of that, I would definitely consider looking into H.H. Holmes and his murder hotel. The book I would recommend is Devil in the White City.
Oh, Eric Larson.
Eric Larson wrote that one.
Yeah. H.H. Holmes he's definitely one of a kind there.
Yeah, he did some horrible, horrible things.
Numerous victims.
He only confessed to 27, but they think there's
probably more.
A lot
more. Yeah. It just amazes me how hotels, they're supposed to be a place of sanction and for people to stay at, and then they turn into these horrible places of murder and just malevolence.
Yeah. We have the Stanley right there.
We do.
It's not, there haven't been as many deaths as the Stanley or the murder castle. That was in okay. So the murder castle, H.H. Holmes was the murder castle, and it was in Chicago.
Okay, Chicago. All right.
There's also the Chelsea Hotel. It's in New York. There's been a lot of deaths over there as well. It was built in 1883. It's been famous for hosting a lot of artists, musicians, but with that hotel, there's been a lot of overdoses, suicides, stuff like that too.
Is that where Janis Joplin had stayed, or?
Yeah, and Sid Vicious,
yeah.
His girlfriend died there.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the one.
That again is terrible. That dark things happen there, but I guess, it goes with human life and living, and we can never I feel like we can never expect like things to never happen.
I think that one good thing about the documentary and then The Gone at Midnight by Jake Anderson, that paint they did really, really well on was that highlighting mental illness. And if you're struggling, if you're needing any sort of help, to reach out to people, because when things get bad, they can go downhill very, very quickly.
I think that's a great message for anybody out there, and particularly, following this case because, this poor woman, she was afflicted with a mental illness, and it got out of hand, and, it's just something that not everybody thinks about that could happen to them or a loved one or anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Behind the Stand. This has been your host, Stephanie.
And this is Kara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next time.